Shalom. First and foremost, giving all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachak, Quadash. Double honors to the apostles, elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect. I want to do a video seeing as how we're getting close to the time of the Passover, and I want to do a video on this information I found a long while ago, going into how when the Most High when he was sending those plagues upon Egypt, he wasn't just sending those plagues upon Egypt to just, tear down Egypt. It wasn't just to destroy Egypt, but it was also to make a mockery at the gods of the Egyptians. Each of those plagues, whether it was the plague of, the river of blood, whether it was the frogs, whether it was the the hail, the flies and things like that, and the frogs, if I'm not mistaken, I mentioned there was 10 plagues. All of these was just not to destroy Egypt and not just to show his hand. Well, I mean, it was to show his hand as well, but it was also to make a mockery at the gods of the Egyptians. And that's the same thing that the Lord's going to do in this time. He's also going to make a mockery of the gods of this Egypt, which is America. So I'm going to go through maybe about, well, we'll see where the Spirit takes me. I don't want to put a time limit on the Spirit, but I'm not going to go through all of the plagues because it's a pretty long article, but just want to bring out some points, just go through some of the plagues just to bring out the point that this is a mockery that the Lord is making upon the Egyptian gods. Don't want to, just want to get to the point, don't want to make it too long. So Lord's willing, this will be edifying. Let's get into it. So it says, in the story of Israel's exodus from slavery in Egypt, the Most High sent devastating plagues on the Egyptians, and there's much more to these plagues than you probably realize. And a little sub thing it says right there, it says pharaohs were considered literal sons of Ra, or the divine incarnation of Horus. They were thought to embody all of the gods of Egypt, to be their representative to the Egyptian people. Many of us are probably familiar with the basics of the story of ancient Israel's exodus from enslavement in Egypt. To briefly recap, the Israelites migrated to Egypt in the time of Joseph, 17 years before the death of the patriarch Jacob, whom the Most High had renamed Israel, which Israel in the Hebrew is Yasha'Allah. He is a prince of God. Initially, they enjoyed the favor of the Egyptians because of all that Joseph had done as the Pharaoh's vizier or prime minister. Right, the Lord had basically made his brothers sell him to the Midianites, if I'm not mistaken. Joseph got carried into Egypt, but the Lord basically made that all happen to where Israel would go into Egypt so that way they could be saved, because there was a famine. If I'm not mistaken, there was going to be 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine in the land of Egypt. So the Lord basically made, put Joseph through a trial there, and then eventually made Joseph became great in Egypt. So that way the Lord could use Joseph to save the Israel and the descendants of Israel from dying from the famine. Just giving a brief synopsis. Continuing, but as the years passed, that relationship changed. The Egyptians came to view the Israelites as a threat. In time, a new pharaoh came to power who enslaved the Israelites. Conditions grew so bad that the Egyptians began killing Hebrew male babies to prevent the Israelites from outnumbering the Egyptians. During this time, the Most High raised up a deliverer named Moses, which in the Hebrew would be Masha, which means drawn out. He was saved at birth and grew up as a member of the Egyptian royal family, but after killing an Egyptian, he fled from Egypt to the land of Midian, where 40 years later, the Most High spoke to him at the burning bush and sent him back to Egypt to deliver the Israelites from slavery. I'll read this. In Exodus chapter 7, verse 1 to 5, the Most High told Moses that he would do three things. He would bring the Israelites out of Egypt, he would do it by great judgments, and he would do it in a way that the Egyptians shall know that I am Yahweh, the true God, or the true power. In Exodus 12 and 12, the Most High adds that he was doing something else very important. Against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. So the judgments, the Most High would carry out would be on a certain level against the Egyptian gods. In doing this, he would teach a lesson to both the Egyptians and the Israelites, who by now had been in Egypt for a number of generations and had drifted far from the religion of their forefathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They had become thoroughly immersed in a corrupt Egyptian culture and religion, right? That's why when they were given the laws, the Most High said, don't do this, don't do these things, because it is an abomination in my sight. Because Israel was there for 430 years, and them being there for so long, they seen things that the Egyptians did, and the Most High had to tell them through the laws that, look, don't do these things, because them being around the Egyptians, because most of the laws, them Egyptians was doing those things. When it goes into not seeing your father's nakedness, not seeing your mother's nakedness, and things like that, them Egyptians were doing those things. They were fine with seeing each other's nakedness, not sleeping with man and man, not sleeping together. Them Egyptians were doing that. Woman and woman, them Egyptians were doing those things. Bestiality, Egyptians were doing those things. So the Lord had to set the rules. Look, them things that you see them people doing over there, don't do that. I don't find that fine. I'm not cool with that. I don't like that stuff. Freaking Egyptians love the Apis bull so much they was having bestiality with it. Egyptian culture was very idolatrous with their multitude of gods and goddesses. Many of these were assumed to take form of animals. So the Egyptians considered bulls, cows, rams, cats, crocodiles, cobras, frogs, and various insects and birds sacred. Note some of these creatures in the depictions of Egyptian deities accompanying this article. Excuse me. Each of the plagues the Most High sent was a direct challenge to one or more of the gods and goddesses of Egypt. And while the Egyptians would have seen such things as locusts and biting insects before, what made these plagues unique is that the Most High divinely intensified these plagues and brought them on the Egyptians at a time of his choosing. Right, that's why the Most High would always tell Moses, go meet Pharaoh early in the morning and go and do these plagues in front of Pharaoh, because what? Instead of them just seeing these regular, of whether it be the plague of frogs or insects or locusts, they would just think, oh, we've always seen those things. But when the Egyptians would see Moses calling this upon them, it'd be like, how the hell is he doing that? And what power is making him do that? And for a time, when you read through Exodus, if I'm not mistaken, I forgot. Uh, I think it might be the fourth plague, if I'm not mistaken, or the fifth plague, where basically when the Pharaoh's wise men couldn't do it, couldn't do the same plague as Moses, because for a time when you read like when Moses and Aaron first went to Pharaoh and they showed him the rods, it was like, cast down your rod before them. The Lord told Moses to cast down your rod before Pharaoh. Pharaoh and his sorcerers, they were able to do the same thing. They were able to they were able to cast down their rods and also make serpents out of it. But the thing about it is, Moses' rods and Moses and Aaron's rods swallowed up the Pharaoh's rods, showing you that the power that was behind Moses and Aaron was stronger than the power that was behind Pharaoh, because they was into wickedness, they was into idolatry, basically Satanism. They were conjuring up demons. So, but there was a certain point where the Most High they would do the same thing that Moses would do, and it'd be like, oh, okay, fine, like with the blood, being in the river. Oh, okay, they did the same thing, but then there was a certain plague after a while. I forgot which plague it was that the Most High stopped, and then they was like, I remember it. They said this is the finger of God. So that's when they realized like this is that God that they're talking about. This is Yahweh. So that's when they start to know that, okay, their God is not a joke. Where was I? I lost my track. I'll just start from the top again. It says each of the plagues the Most High sent was a direct challenge to one or more of the gods and goddesses of Egypt. And while the Egyptians would have seen such things as locusts and biting insects before, what made these plagues unique is that the Most High divinely intensified these plagues and brought them on the Egyptians at a time of his choosing. Like I explained, That's why the Most High would always tell Moses, go in front of Pharaoh and do this in front of him. So it would show them that the Most High Yahweh is the one that's doing these things. You're not just seeing these things happen on your own accord. And you would know that, Yahweh is the God. He is the true power. Um, so the plagues were much worse than they normally would have been. And they came exactly when the Most High, through Moses, said they would happen, to show that the Most High was behind them, right? So that every time the Most High would send Moses to Pharaoh, and then he would tell him to do the plague, you would know, like, okay, that's that God he keeps telling me about that tells to let the people go. And it's like, it's him again doing this. So it would just be like a banging on the head, beating you down, letting you know that Yahweh is the true God. These gods that the Egyptian believed in, there's no power behind them. So it says, so let's notice each plague and let's notice each plague and then see some of the gods or goddesses, some of the gods or goddesses, the true power or the Most High, the way it's written there, sorry, was executing judgment against. We'll see what the true power, which is the Most High Yahweh, did to teach a lesson to both the Egyptians and the Israelites. And that's something we could learn from as well. The first plague, uh, water turns to blood. The first plague was directed against the Nile River, the life and heart of Egypt. Egypt was a desert country, and its economy and livelihood depended on the Nile. On the Nile, its crops were irrigated by the Nile, and its fields depended on fertile soil washed by the river. The Nile was also the primary highway for the country. Much of its trade and commerce depended on it. So what happened to this lifeblood of the nation? Let's read about it in Exodus chapter 7, verses 19 to 20. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, say to Aaron, Moses' brother who accompanied him, take your rod and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, which would be the Nile River, over their streams and over their rivers, over their ponds, and over all their pools of water, that they may become blood, and that there may be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, both in buckets of wood and pitchers of stone. And Moses and Aaron did so, and as the Lord commanded, so he lifted up the rod and struck the waters that were in the river, in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants. And all the waters that were in the river were turned to blood, emphasis added throughout. While this plague was primarily directed against the Nile River, it went beyond that. All other water sources were affected, including irrigation streams and pools, and even waters stored in pitchers and buckets in people's houses, showing you like it said, it was divinely enhanced. The person said earlier, basically meaning that, look, this is not just going to affect the Nile. Even the water that you collected from the Nile that you have in their pitchers and buckets in your house, they also going to turn to blood. So imagine people coming home and they're saying, oh my God, this is blood. This ain't water. What the hell is this? A man may come home and be like, baby, you made some wine today. You might taste, but oh shit, this is blood. What the hell is this? Because that's how the Most High the Most High does things in grand fashion. When the Most High wants to show off, he don't just show out a little bit. Like, we like to say that we're Jake. Jake likes to do amazing things. When Jake want to score a touchdown, what they want to do, they want to do some big celebration. When Jake is going to dunk the basketball, he don't just dunk it. He got to slam dunk. Like, he got to break the rim and break everything. So how you think when the Most High wants to show his power, you think he's not, the Most High's going to do something grand and big. He going to just, you going to be like, damn. That's the only words you can say. Like, there's no words to explain when the Most High shows off. It's like, damn, like, he just took it to the next level. Like, it's just, you can't explain it. When the Most High shows off, you just be like, shit. Continuing, this was terrible disaster for the Egyptians. The whole lifeblood of the country was poisoned and undrinkable. And if that weren't bad enough, the fish that were in the river died. The river stank, and the Egyptians could not drink the water of the river. Which, if you think about that, also probably brought on a famine as well, because You can't drink no water because the rivers turn to blood. What you gonna do? Drink blood? But knowing them Egyptians, they probably do some nastiness like that. And then what? Also the rivers stank, so Egypt started stinking. And then also the fishes, they died in the river. So there's some of your food supply right there that's gone. But also it was a direct affront against the god of the Nile River, as it's gonna get into, which if I'm not mistaken, I think it's called Happy, is the name of it. Uh, so there was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. This was a complete catastrophe. The Egyptian supply of water for drinking, bathing, and washing was now a toxic mess. The fish, one of their major food sources, were wiped out. This was utterly devastating to the country. So, how was this a judgment against the Egyptian gods? Because the Nile was so important to the Egyptians, they worshipped several gods who were responsible for watching over it. The great god uh, Kunum, however you say that, usually represented as a human male with a ram's head, was viewed as the giver and guardian of the Nile River. Another god, Happy, that's the one I know, I've read about. Spirit of the Nile was credited with the annual Nile flood that brought in thousands of tons of fresh topsoil to fertilize the land every year. Because what the Nile would do, the Nile at a certain point during the year would overflow, and that would make the ground fertile for crops to grow off of it. But them thinking, oh, this is some god that's doing this, so we'll name it Happy. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Happy is like a man with some titties and things like that, and it's just some madness that the Egyptians was into. So instead of them thinking that which these heathen, they believe in their gods, because we were given the spirit to believe in the one true power, but still these Egyptians would think, oh, it's some weird god with a man with titties, that Baphomet type stuff. That when the water of the Nile River would overflow, and it would overflow and go onto the soil on the ground, that it would make the land fertile so crops could grow. Here it is, they're thinking and believing in some man with titties and stuff like that, instead of giving honor to the true power, Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, that created heavens and earth, that created everything that's therein. Um, yeah, it says another god, Happy, spirit of the Nile, was credited with the annual Nile flood that brought in thousands of tons of fresh topsoil to fertilize the land every year. He was also honored as god of fishes, birds, and marshes. So here it is, the Most High is the one who's the creator of the fishes. But here it is, you're thinking that this God is the one who's the creator of the fishes and things like that. A man with boobs, which is why he was. And these gods are still around today. Don't think they just may look a little different, and people are worshiping these gods today. They may just look a little different, but these gods are still around. You know, they're just called by slightly different names, but if you trace back their origins, you'll find that these gods of today go back to these Egyptian gods that were worshipped during this time. Also linked to the Nile flood waters were the gods Sodapet or Sopet or Sodpet and Sati, I'm guessing. One of Egypt's trinity of greatest gods was Osiris, the god of the underworld. The Egyptians viewed the Nile River as the bloodstream, and it was now literally like blood. You could imagine the horror and feelings of abandonment of the Egyptians on formerly as they looked on the formerly beautiful, powerful, and life-sustaining river that was now a giant stinking cesspool with tons of dead and rotting fish lining the shores. This struck also at whatever god that name is, the guardian goddess of fish and fishermen. So all these gods, the god of the Nile, the god of fish and fishermen, and no, see, in these days, people gonna give honor and respect to Yahweh Ba'ashem Ashah, the one that created heaven and earth. You're not gonna give credit to all these other gods. Esau, you're not gonna get your glory as you're trying to set yourself up to be the god of this world as well, with your little, you know, implantable, or I'm gonna call it the subdermal object that you want to put in people. You're not gonna become a god like that. Everybody's gonna honor Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua in these last days. And it's gonna be done either the easy way or the hard way. The choice is yours. I'm not gonna read it 'cause like I said, this is a really long article, so I'm gonna just go. I think I'm gonna read like 3 of them instead. I'm gonna read the plague of the frogs, and I think I'm gonna leave the last one, which is the death of the firstborn. And Lord's willing, I'll be able to put the article in the description box as well, so you can read through it. It says the second plague, which is the plague of the frogs. The next plague was that of frogs, described in the first part of Exodus 8. Large numbers of frogs would not have been unusual, because the Nile had plenty of marshes that were a natural breeding ground for frogs. But this plague was different. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, Thus says Yahweh, let my people go, that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all your territory with frogs. So the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into your house, and into your bedroom, and on your bed, into the houses of your servants, and on your people, into your ovens, and into your kneading bowls," or which really, they're using a different translation, but it should say kneading troughs, if I'm not mistaken, as the scriptures say. And that was Exodus 8, verses 1 to 3. Frogs were considered a manifestation of the goddess Hequet, goddess of birth and wife of the creator of the world. Hequet was depicted with the head of a frog and the body of a woman. It's madness. Also, the court of Hapi mentioned above included crocodile gods and frog goddesses, and the primordial god Nun, or Nun, whatever, Ket, and Heat. I gotta agree with Elder Yashaman, but all these gods that you people are into in the Kemetic community, where these gods at today? Why ain't they doing nothing? Why ain't these gods fixing the famine? Why ain't these gods fixing the inflation? Where these gods at? What they doing, man? All this just, Salakia for going, I'm not trying to be on a, it's just like all this foolishness, man. The crocodile god, frog goddess, a man with boob god, a god, another god with it's a woman but has a frog face. This is nonsense, man. This is foolishness. And like I said, these gods are here today again, just different names or whatever, and people worship this nonsense, man. This is foolishness, man. What the hell is this? And the world has only gotten worse. So if people believe this back then, how much more today? Don't be surprised. People believe in this type of nonsense, man. Cunningly devised fables, as the scriptures say. Frogs were viewed as sacred in Egypt because they lived in 2 worlds, in water and on land. They were considered so sacred that even accidentally stepping on one could be punished by death. Notice 2 great ironies here. Hequet, I'm guessing that's how you say the name, was supposed to be the goddess who controls birth, but in this plague, literally millions and millions of frogs were overflowing the land. The frog birth rate was obviously out of control, and accidentally killing one by stepping on it was punishable by death. Yet how could that be avoided when the ground was everywhere covered with a slimy, croaking mass of frogs? There were frogs on the ground, frogs in the houses, frogs in their beds, frogs in their cooking ovens, and frogs in their bowls. So they was careful. They didn't want to kill their frogs because they viewed it as sacred and they thought they could be put to death. So the Lord was really just, messing with the Egyptians, saying, "Well, where's your God at? Why isn't your God, get rid of the, of these frogs? If your gods that you guys believe in have any power, why aren't they stepping up and helping you guys? Why aren't they getting rid of the plagues that the God that Moses called upon, which is Yahweh? Why aren't your God stepping up and getting rid of the, fighting back? Where they at? What they doing? It's the Most High's, like what does what does us Jake do? When someone's, calling you out, or when someone, when you're calling someone out, you're like, where your boy at? He was talking all that hot shit before. Where he at? You know, that's what the Most High is doing to these guys. These guys you say created the earth. These guys, do all the great things that I do in the earth. Well, where they at? I'm doing all this stuff. Well, why ain't you guys protecting you if these gods are so great? The Egyptians literally could not walk without stepping on frogs and squashing them, but in so doing, they were violating their own laws and sentencing themselves to death for offending the goddess Hequet and these other frog deities. Finally, the people had to go out to gather them into great mounds of decaying Slakia. Finally, the people had to go out to gather them into great mounds of decaying, stinking frogs, so much for their sacred animal. Here, the Most High showed that he was far more powerful than all these so called gods, right? And the Most High is going to do that in these days as well. He's going to show himself that he is the God, that you should fear and worship him. Now I'm going to go to the last one. We know about what the Most High did to the livestock when that was an attack on the Apis bull, because the Apis bull is one of the Egyptians' big deities that they believe in as well. That's one of the things that caused friction between the Egyptians and the Persians, that was when damn, what's that guy's name? Damn it, I forgot his name. He was the second to Cyrus. It was Cyrus, then what was his name? Cambyses the second. That was it was his son. It was Cyrus the Great and then Cambyses the second. When Cambyses the second, who was ruling, he destroyed the Apis bull when he went over to Egypt to take it down. Because when you go into the breakdown, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's Daniel the seventh chapter, talks about the three ribs in the mouth of the bear, which represents the Medo-Persians, which was Babylon, which really started with Lydia first, then Babylon, then Egypt. Lydia and Babylon was conquered during the time of Cyrus, and then during the time of Cambyses the second, which was the Persians being in power, um, Cambyses took over Egypt, and him doing so, he destroyed one of the statues of the Apis bull. And from that day forward, that always made the Egyptians look at the Persians. They always hated the Persians, and that's why when Alexander came and took down the Persians, that the Egyptians uh, looked at Alexander like some type of god, like they really liked Alexander and worshipped him because he took down the Persians because of what Cambyses II did. So just a little history. Let me go. All right, so I'm gonna hit this last one. It says the 10th plague, death of the firstborn. The 10th plague was very selective. It destroyed the Egyptian firstborn, both human and animal. Then Moses said, "Thus saith Yahweh, about midnight, I will go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, even to the firstborn of the," it says female servant, but it should be male servant, "who is behind the handmill, and all the firstborn of the animals. Then there shall then Slakia, then there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as was not like it before, nor shall it be again." And that's quoting Exodus chapter 11, verses 4 to 6. Why the firstborn? The Most High considered Israel his own firstborn among the nations, and warned of this retribution on Egypt. Exodus chapter 4, verses 22 to 23. Also, in that time and culture, the firstborn received the greatest share of the father's inheritance. The firstborn generally became the country's ruling elite, the generals and military officers, the chief administrators, and usually the pharaohs themselves. This particular pharaoh apparently wasn't a firstborn since he didn't die in the plague. Perhaps his older brother had died at a young age, and this pharaoh was next in line, right? Because usually the firstborn, just like when you read the story of Jacob and Esau, usually the firstborn would get the principal blessing, but we know with that story, Jacob and Esau, the Most High constructed in a way that Jacob would get the principal blessing because it was his first, anyways. But usually, how it's supposed to go is the older or the firstborn son obviously would get the principal blessing. But seeing as how this person brings up a good point, seeing as how the Pharaoh didn't die with the death of the firstborn, meaning that he wasn't the firstborn child. We don't know what happened. This person is making an educated guess at how the story may have went down as to him getting the throne. But we know that his son died during the death of the firstborn. I was just going to go into. So it says, perhaps his older brother had died at a younger age, and this Pharaoh was next in line, but his son was in line to be the next Pharaoh, and he perished in the plague. So this person is going to explain it. If not, I'll explain it. Look at what like I said, the Most High really destroyed Egypt. He did a grand number on Egypt. Again, the gods of Egypt were silent. Serket or Serket, the goddess of protection, was proven powerless. We're just going to call this dude Mesh. Mesh, the goddess who presided at the birth of children, failed to save the firstborn. All these Egyptian gods, the Most High is making a mockery of them. None of these gods stood up and protected the Egyptians, showing you who the true power is. And the Most High is going to make that known again, like I said, in these days as well. All these things that people rely on, you turning to the government, the scriptures say, woe unto you that go down to Egypt for help. The Most High is going to let you know in these last days that you going down and looking to Egypt, which in this day is America, you looking at Egypt for help is going to fail you. Just like ancient Egypt failed, all these things that you go to ancient Egypt for help for is going to fail. If I'm not mistaken, that might be Isaiah 30 or Isaiah 31, where it says, matter of fact, let me get it. I don't want to butcher it. Let me see if I can find it. I know the words is hoping. Yep, that's it. Isaiah 31 says, now the Isaiah chapter 31 verse 3 says, now the Egyptians are men and not the Most High, and their horses flesh and not spirit. When the Most High shall stretch out his hand, which is his power, just like he did it against on ancient Egypt. Now this is talking about. Now this is in Isaiah 31. This is talking about modern Egypt, which is America. But just like the Most High stretched his hand out on ancient Egypt, he's going to do that on modern day Egypt, which is America. When the Lord Yahweh shall stretch out his hand, both he that helpeth, which is a person that helps, shall fall, and he that is hoping shall fall down together, which hoping is the person that receives help. So just like back in ancient Egypt, these gods that you were relying on, right, back in ancient Egypt, he that helpeth and he that hoping, the one that receives help, shall fall together. So that's what's going to happen in this time. You looking to Esau as he's the God that he has all the answers for everything. He can just solve all the world's problems and all that. Egypt is going to fall because Egypt's going to need help. And those that go to Egypt is going to fall as well. You still going to need help even if you go to Egypt because Egypt going to need help as well. So that's why it says, I'll read it again. Both he that helpeth shall fall. So Egypt that helps you is going to fall. And he that is hoping, the one receiving help, shall fall as well. So here it is, you're going to help to Egypt, but Egypt is saying, I've fallen and can't get up. Life alert. They also going to need help as well. So it's futile to go to Egypt for help. And that's the same thing with these guys. Pharaoh was probably looking to these guys to help, but he was falling. And these guys that were supposed to, he's looking to help from, were also falling as well. Where was I? It says, I'm guessing Sobek, the god of protection and fertility, who epitomized the might of pharaohs, couldn't protect anyone. Reunet, the god who appeared as a vulture, the special protector of the god of Pharaoh, could not protect. All these protection gods, and none of them showed up to protect. And again, just bashing the point. Yahweh in these days, Ba'ashem Yahushua, is going to show that he is the one that you're supposed to go to for help. He's going to hammer that point in these last days that you are to go, excuse me, to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. You are to call upon him for everything. You're supposed to go to him for help. And he's going to hammer that point in these last days. But all these guys, and you can liken that to all these things that people pride themselves in thinking that it's going to protect them. Your money, that's going to fail you. If you have weapons, that's going to fail you. Your JC, Jesus Christ, you believe in, that's going to fail you. That's a false God. That's not the true name of the Heavenly Father's Son. All these things that people trust in these days, your jobs, your money, all that is going to fail. So what are you going to have to go through? And I'm talking about our people, you so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians. You are the children of Israel. And those of you who may not, always got to say this, who may not look black, who may not look, Hispanic and all that, if your spirit resonates with this, if you look like the other if you look like the other nations, you most likely are of the children of Israel. And if this word resonates with you as well, you are of the seed of Israel. The same thing goes for y'all as well. Money is not going to help you. Matter of fact, let me get that since I mentioned it. It says riches, Proverbs 11:4, riches profit not in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivereth from death. You're not going to be able to come to the Most High with money and give him money and think that your riches is what's going to save you from death. No, righteousness is what's going to deliver from death. Actually, there's another precept now that I'm thinking about it. I believe it's in Psalms. It's one of the early ones. Let me see if I can find it. There we go. Psalms 4 and 5. I'll just hit the point. Psalms 4 and 5. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness and put your trust in the Lord. And where is our offices? Our sacrifices of righteousness, doing the work, repenting, turning back to the Lord, praying to him, seeking him 10 times more, to the best of your abilities, of course, and growing off of that. Doing the works, being diligent in the works. Like I said, praying, fasting, all these things, doing the fruits of the spirit. That is your sacrifices of righteousness, and put your trust in the Lord. That is your sacrifice. That's what's going to save you from death. Not your money, not your job, not whatever benefits you have on this side of the world. None of these things are going to save you. All these gods that the Egyptians believed in, these gods of the firstborn or whatever, these gods of protection, gods of the frogs or whatever, none of these gods showed up. The only God that showed up was Yahweh, and he was making things happen there. He was showing that, look, I am the true power. I'm the true God. Fear me. Says, with this plague, the Egyptian Pharaoh finally relented and let the Israelites go, forcing this Pharaoh to act against his Slakia. This forcing a Pharaoh to act against his will would demonstrate the Most High's overthrow of his sovereignty and of the gods who represented it, who, which is another god, the god personifying royal authority, Wajet, the goddess of royal authority, Ma'at, the goddess of cosmic order, under whose aegis the rulers of Egypt sovereigned, the war goddess of Sekhmet, who supposedly breathed fire against the enemies of Pharaoh. All these false gods were judged and proven powerless and worthless. Right, and I'll read this as well. It says, judgment against Pharaoh. The death of the firstborn was the last plague, but it was not the final judgment on the gods of Egypt. One more major god remained to be further judged and to be proven to be proven to be no God at all. To continue the story, after the Israelites at last left Egypt, Pharaoh once again changed his mind, which the Most High put the spirit on him to do so. He set out with 600 of his best chariots, plus all the other chariots of Egypt, possibly several thousand in all, to return the Israelites to slavery. The Egyptians cornered the Israelites at sea, which is the Gulf of Suez, but the Most High delayed them by a pillar of fire and cloud while the Israelites crossed through on dry land to the other side, which that was a chariot that the Most High, which Yahushua was in that chariot. Uh, that was what they call today a UFO, but that was a chariot that the Lord sent to protect the Israelites. After the Israelites were across, the Most High lifted the pillar of fire and cloud, and then he brought the judgment on the last of Egypt's major gods. That god was none other than Pharaoh himself. The pharaohs were considered literal sons of Ra, or the divine incarnation of Horus, which meant that they too were considered to be gods here on earth. In a way, in a way, they were thought to embody all of the gods of Egypt and to be their representative to the Egyptian people. That's how they wielded so much power over the people, the power of life and death to enslave, and that's why they built such great monuments to themselves and such fabulous tombs filled with riches and treasures. These were these were to honor gods. It was thought not it was like it. These were these were to honor gods. It was though not mere men. A pharaoh's greatest responsibility was to keep everything in order, a manifestation of Ma'at mentioned earlier, to ensure that dozens of Egyptian gods and goddesses performed their responsibilities well so the kingdom of Egypt will remain prosperous and strong. That's why the Most High always told Moses to go meet with Pharaoh in the morning, because one of the things that Pharaoh had to do in the morning, he had to get up real early in the morning, and I forgot the god's name, but he'd have to go and help. According to their stories, there was a god that was wrestling with some other god, and he had to fight to bring the sun back up into the sky. And basically, Pharaoh had to get up early in the morning to go help that god to bring the sun back up into the sky. That's why the Most High would always tell the Most High would always tell Moses to go meet with Pharaoh early in the morning, basically to interrupt the Pharaoh and mess with the Pharaoh to stop him from doing that. So that way the Egyptians would see, hold on, if you didn't go help out the god to bring the sun up, then how is it up? Showing you that your gods ain't shit. Just like in these days, the Most High is going to show, although the Most High, just like he told for Pharaoh, for this same reason have I raised thee up, so that I might show my power in thee. Just like the Most High is going to do with Pharaoh today, which are the elites, the modern day Egyptians. What's he going to do? He's raising them up so that way he could show his power. He could show his power in this day. So that way, all your little technology, all your little knickknacks and things like that, the Most High is going to show it to be nothing. Your miracles and all that, by your technology, the Most High is going to give men spiritual power to bring people back to life. And that's going to what? Bring all those who are, that's going to show that, give glory and honor to Yahweh. And that's also going to, what? Bring back those who, may be of the elect to bring them into the fold as well. Now, like I said, it's going to be all to give honor and glory to Yahweh through his son, Yahweh Shai. So your technology is going to be shown to be nothing, because technology can break down. But you got to understand, how do you break down a man of the Lord that's connected to his power, and the Lord gives him spiritual power to raise somebody back from the dead, or to just lift up a tank and toss it across the city or something like that? You see, with your robots, you can just easily EMP them and shut them down. Your technology, again, EMP it and shut it all down. Really, that's it. You just EMP everything and your technology shut down. But how do you stop a man of the Lord with the spirit of the Lord? It's on fire in him to raise somebody back up from the dead, to bring about spiritual power, whether it be by means of, I'm just going to use my example because I just watched Dragon Ball Z, to do a Kamehameha or a Destructo Disc or a Special Beam Cannon or a Gallic Gun or a Big Bang Attack, some craziness like that. or like Cyclops shoot beams out his eyes, or Magneto lifting up metal. Because when the spirit's on you, like it was with Samson, it was hot on him. It says when he was tied up that the spirit was so hot on him that the rope or whatever that was on his hands burnt off. How do you stop that? Compared to your technology, which I just brought up one thing, which is an EMP, just shut it all down. How do you stop the spirit of Yahweh Bashem Al Shah? How do you turn that off? You can't. You can't deal with it. Where was I? Uh, uh, but this Pharaoh failed spectacularly. He could not withstand the plagues that devastated his kingdom and plunged it into chaos. He couldn't prevent the death of his own son, and he couldn't prevent his forces from drowning in the sea. He and his mighty kingdom were left utterly broken and shamed. The last of the great gods of Egypt was tried in the balance, judged, and found wanting. Uh, all this considered, we see that the plagues on Egypt were not random. The Most High is a God of logic and order. He sent each of the plagues to specifically show the Egyptians and Israelites that he was greater than all the gods of Egypt. And also, I just want to bring out a point. I don't know if they said it, but also the Most High completely destroyed Egypt as well, because destroying the firstborn, what? He killed off his son, which was what? To be heir to the throne. So now you don't have an heir to the throne. And he also killed Pharaoh, because Pharaoh also followed the children of Israel through the Red Sea. So now Egypt's structure is completely destroyed. Who's going to be your next king now? You can't say that the firstborn, because the firstborn's gone. And Pharaoh died chasing Israel. He died in the scriptures say the Red Sea, but it's the Gulf of Suez. So you see how the Most High really did a number on Egypt. And I'll read that one more time. All this considered, we see that the plagues on Egypt were not random. The Most High is a God of logic and order, so the Most High has calculated what the things he does. It's like he's playing chess. He sent each of the plagues to specifically show that the Egyptians and Israelites, that he was greater than all the gods of Egypt, right? Because you had a lot, especially when they was at the, like I said, the scriptures say the Red Sea, but when they was at the Gulf of Suez, you had Israelites who was saying, oh, did we not straightly say that we would rather be in Egypt? Roughly paraphrasing, and the Most High, put the spirit on Moses to, part the Red Sea. But you had those Israelites that were still unbelieving even after seeing all the 10 plagues. Did we not straightly tell you to leave us in Egypt and things like that? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians and die, you know? But yeah, like I said, I'll put the link in description for this. Lord's will, I'll be able to. And pray that this video was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rachak Wadash, Shalom.